we saw some Penix.
Oh, who pulled it out?
Yeah, no kidding.
The Falcons pulled out some Penix, and it was better than their cousins.
Wow.
Such a small sample size.
Yep, small sample of Penix.
I just like to see more Penix before I get comfortable.
Moving all in.
And going balls deep, if you will.
Yeah, if you're going to move all in, you want to see the full unit.
Focus on the yak instead of the wop. And
Oh my God. And mustache rides up for you. Sights and sounds and edges found, you will now get down with the Underground, the show that goes to the depths of the Dynasty landscape. I am Trav hosting, West Coasting for you tonight. Of course, we're posted up on that Undroppables YouTube channel, but I'm really excited about these intros. Of course, we've got Jax Falcone, the Miyagi of the Undroppables, with us. How you doing tonight, brother? Always a treat. What's cracking?
Feeling really good. Recorded the Undrafted today. Backed by popular demand was John Lobb. How exciting is that? People love John Lobb.
So much fun.
How could you not?
Yeah, exactly. So John Lobb, Undrafted, check it out. But
Absolutely.
This is the introduction we've all been waiting for.
100%. We are so excited to have him back. I was saying there feels like an additional aura of wisdom to him, maybe a little bit more distinguished for a man who was already pretty damn distinguished with the pinkies up. But he's casual Kuvatakis tonight. Welcome back to one Joe Quavius Kuvatakis, fresh off of becoming a first-time dad. And Jax, as fellow dads, I would like to say, Joe, to you, welcome to the brotherhood. It is a beautiful thing. And from everything that we have seen so far, you are doing a bang-up job. So welcome back to the show and welcome to the brotherhood, my man.
Congratulations.
Thank you guys so much. First of all, I just want to say I truly cannot thank the Undroppables family enough for my full pay paternity leave. That was very appreciated.
That's what we do, man.
I had more time if I wanted it, but I'm not going to lie. I listened to last week's episode, just the two of you. It was really good. And I was like, it's not going to take long before they realize they don't need me. I better
Wally
get my
Pip.
ass back to work.
Yep.
Yeah.
I better get
Wally
my ass
Pip.
back to work. So I want you guys to know, thank you so much. I want you guys to know there are no pinkies up, as you noticed. Casual Kuvatakis. It's actually not even casual Kuvatakis. I got a little surprise for you and the audience right now. I'm gonna mess around right here. Hopefully I don't mess up my rig here. I brought my hard hat and I got my lunch pail right
my
here.
Goodness.
Hard hat, lunch pail.
Wow.
Listen, it was a lovely week off becoming a dad, but I'm here to work, boys. I'm here to work. I got takes that have been brewing. Lots of time in the hospital. Lots of napping time.
Wow.
Hard hat, lunch pail. Let's go.
Wow.
By the way, you can never really say pinkies up again because, I think I'm the only one of us that has a hard hat and a lunch pail.
I mean, I'm gonna have to work on my game here. I mean, I'm usually first to the office, last to leave, but this hard hat has me one up for sure.
Yeah, hey,
Not
Jack.
only that, it's got my name on it, bro. You know that's legit.
That's
it's
intense.
got my name on it.
Wow.
Note that there is not a speck of dirt, though.
That makes it a little aristocratic. When you have your name on your hard hat,
that is one speck.
Yeah.
We've got a
There's
speck.
no more than one speck of dirt on said hard hat.
The name on the hard hat makes it aristocratic for sure.
Yeah,
like a regular guy
100%,
working, it just says, it would say like Joe. It wouldn't say Kuvatakis. So this is already a little bit sus.
Those of us that wear hard hats, we have a hierarchy.
For sure.
I'll tell you what, though. I'll tell you what, boys. We're setting the over-under on ham sandwiches in that lunch pail at about 15. I'll tell you that. And I might be smashing the over because this guy gets his hands dirty.
For the audience listening and not able to see the hard hat, I'll give you one guess as to what color that hard hat was. One guess and one guess only.
Ding, 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 ding.
You have one guess to get it white.
Yeah.
That hard hat was white as could be. That's all I could say. Yep.
Oh, man. Well,
we
Joe,
are back.
Yeah, we are so back.
By the way, I wanted to tell you a story, Joe, of, when I became a parent, I actually called into work. I said, hey, listen, I'm gonna be having a baby this weekend, I need the weekend off. And they're like, oh my God, when is the baby due? I was like, I don't know, probably like 9 months or something like that,
Hashtag team sex, baby. Hashtag team sex.
Took me a second. Sorry.
I was on a hard hat.
I only respond to dad jokes now. That was not a dad joke.
That one sat with you guys for a moment there. You're like, what is going on?
Oh, I had to find the way to get off of mute. That was a good one, Jack. Yeah. I might call in with that tomorrow.
Yep.
I'm just sleep deprived, and I want the audience to know this. So I think Trav wants a bunch of argument tonight, and I just want you guys to know that I don't know if I've got the mental capacity because of my lack of sleep. So what I'm going to do is let you guys fight. I'm going to pick who I think is winning, and I'm just going to sucker punch and kick the guy that I think is losing.
Yeah, throw a
Just so you guys know. That's how this is going to go.
Isn't that what always fucking happens, though? Isn't that what always happens when I'm sitting here just taking shots left, right, and center from both of you bastards?
Yep. He's just going to throw some Goddards in there.
Give me a reason to attack Jax. Give me a reason. I'll do it.
Yeah, fucking dare me. Okay,
I love
it. I did in the group chat earlier say, oh, we are going to fight tonight. But I think I backed off that a little bit because I think it's going to be some fun conversation and we don't have to battle too hard, Joe. I'll, we'll go easy a little bit here. But we are the Dynasty Underground, so we do have to get into it since you're so ready to get to work, Joe. And we're getting back to our team series, guys. It's been a fun little foray, Jax. Last week, we dove into some rebuild and some contender strategy and some targets and stuff like that. It was fun, but we're getting back into the nitty gritty with Joe Quave in the crib. And we're going to talk about some of these teams who have young quarterbacks looking to take the next step. So always fun teams to try to attach to because the glory in hitting on these teams and maybe the weapons around these quarterbacks is maybe a little bit greater because the quarterbacks haven't necessarily shown us that they're at the elite level yet. So we might be taking more of a shot, right? We might be trying to be a year early on some of these guys. And if it hits, it's just that much sweeter for us fantasy gamers. So we're going to be talking about teams like the Panthers with Bryce Young, the Bears with Caleb Williams. We're going to talk about the Falcons with Michael Penix, the Patriots with your boy Drake Maye, Jax, as well as the Vikings with JJ McCarthy. And that's where we're going to start, guys. And one other thing that I did want to mention, we didn't say it off the top, that Scott Fishbowl season is in full swing. So anybody who is a part of it or not a part of it, please go donate to Fantasy Cares or a charity of your choice, whichever one. It's all good. I am deep into my draft. I went to a live draft on Sunday, and you guys are into your online drafts as well. We were also on the Scott Fishbowl Podathon. So if you go to stream number 3, I think it's about 1 hour and 24 minutes in, we come in. But if you go a little bit before that, you'll see the boys, Greinberg and Biggs, on there as well. So it was an Undroppables hour on the Podathon, and it was a great time. And the reason why I kind of brought this up, guys, is feel free to fire in any of your Scott Fishbowl takes or things that you've been thinking about these guys, just since it's so topical, because I think that might come up for some of these guys with me. So let's talk about the Vikings, guys, because I think when we talk about it, the centerpiece right now that we're looking at is JJ McCarthy. We've talked about him quite a bit on the show, guys, in some of our rankings episodes. And when we look at things in his favor, I'm going to kind of set the stage a little bit, boys, and maybe let you guys do the heavy lifting on JJ a bit here. But when we look at the things in his favor, obviously Kevin O'Connell is a guy that we love, we like to attach to. He's kind of one of those number one notches in the belt. He's always going to have an efficient run game as well. Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason have been brought in to do that, and we're going to talk about those guys in a minute. The weapons is where it all stems from, though. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hockenson, even Jalen Naylor was a little frisky last year, and we like Ty Felton, who was brought in. So I think all of those things point to him having successful, essentially rookie year. JJ McCarthy coming in, obviously it's the second year, but he got injured last season. So I think all of those things are in his favor and it looks really good. But as the whole poker of the group, boys, I felt like I might have to. No, I'm not actually going to come with any huge holes on JJ McCarthy because there's some little ones, but I think some of them can be explained away by some of that stuff that I talked about previously here. The main things that I see, and then if you guys have any additional holes to add to this, I would love to hear them. Obviously, the expectations. He comes in with massive expectations on a team that made the playoffs, had a great record last season. Essentially, he's like a rookie too, right? So hitching our wagon to him as fantasy gamers does have some of that risk, being that he's never thrown an NFL pass. And then, of course, back in college, he never had a ton of volume. So we haven't really seen him take on a workload like what we expect him to take on in the NFL. So those are kind of the little holes that I see, but I think some of the things around him in his ecosystem can kind of help mitigate some of that. Maybe it's a little bit more of a gradual build. But do either of you, Jax, maybe do you see any holes in JJ McCarthy aside from that?
So we brought up the Vikings actually today with John Lobb on the Undrafted, and centered it around the Jordan Addison, TJ Hockenson, sort of the secondary weapons on the team, being that sometimes that's what suffers with a little less prolific quarterback play, and maybe they'll have a little less prolific quarterback play with JJ McCarthy. He also said something that I couldn't really refute. He goes, have we maybe gotten a little too far out on our skis with JJ McCarthy? And I said, yeah, probably, especially me. I've got him at like quarterback 12 in Dynasty. I think that's as rich as you can expect to pay. I think that's probably too high. Like if you're asking me, I mean, you can't have him any higher right now. The kid's never played a game. So I think there's probably a little bit of inflation right now and probably a good time to sell because we don't know what the answer to this quiz is going to be. I do believe in JJ McCarthy, but insofar as I have him where I have him, that's kind of where he falls if he hits. I mean, we haven't really paid those prices yet, right? We've had this conversation all off season about the startups where you got JJ McCarthy and then traded him immediately, Joe. Obviously, you sort of took the value and then sold on the value. You sort of bought low and sold high all in one startup. So I think we're practicing what we preach on this situation. And I think there's definitely some question marks that are yet to be answered. I think if we look at the bull case, the pie in the sky, sure, I think he could be a fringe quarterback one finish. I don't think any of us really sit here and think, oh yeah, this is a top 6 finish potentially. That'd be very, very, very surprising. Like not really where we expect. We sort of, if we got a Bo Nix season from him this year, that would be a gigantic W. So
Incredible.
Right? You know what I mean? So I think what we're hoping is that he affords himself efficiently and he's able to award or reward, whatever. You'll tell me the right word, Joe. You're the smart guy around here. But take care of his weapons, which should be pretty well concentrated around Jefferson and Addison and Hockenson. Those are your pass catchers, obviously running backs included, but there's not a lot of other weapons there to sort of satiate. It's just those 3. So as long as it can be a concentrated target share, and here's the other thing, every quarterback that we've seen perform under O'Connell has beat expectations. So this would be the first one to not beat expectations, even though those expectations are quite high.
I actually think that's just where we start, right? I'll hit the pause button on that for just a moment. Going into last season, JJ McCarthy was my number 2 rookie quarterback coming in. Now he went after the rest of those first round rookies, right? Everybody went before him. So there's probably some signal there that should give us a little bit of pause. And I am taking it all with a grain of salt, but he also landed better than any of them. People said Caleb Williams landed better, but he clearly didn't.
Right.
And so it's like JJ McCarthy actually got the softest landing spot with this great offensive-minded head coach that's basically the OC, arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL, arguably one of the best wide receiver 2s in the NFL, arguably a top 4, top 5 tight end in the NFL, a great pass catching running back. And, now Naylor, acquitted himself very nicely last year. And they added Ty Felton, who's like a great yak guy and an interesting, wide receiver 4, who may be the wide receiver 3 to start the season. But I actually feel pretty comfortable with that. So situationally, it's good. KOC has made heroes out of Dobbs, Nick Mullins, Sam Darnold. We had all written him off. that's the biggest one, right?
Yeah.
We had all written him off for dead, and he made Sam Darnold a franchise quarterback for another team. Even Kirk Cousins, right? Like
Yep.
we all thought Kirk Cousins was like the mid of the mid quarterbacks, and then a year or two with KOC, and it's like, well, this guy's like a top 8 guy. So it's this weird combination of, yes, the downside is greater than the upside based on his current pricing.
Yes.
And that should always give us pause and always make us think. But the situation is so good, and we hate to bet on situation, but like the situation is so good, and we've seen guys with lesser talents succeed in this offense. In addition to the fact that he's got a better arm than all of them, he's faster than all of them. He had an incredible winning record in college and won a national championship, which none of the other ones can say. So I don't know. It's like check. Price is scary, but if you're gonna make a dumb bet, which this admittedly kind of is, it's like this is the kind of dumb bet you kind of want to make. And so I'm all in to a point. You mentioned that startup where it's like, immediately I got all these oohs and ahs when I took him in the 4th round, and I turned around and traded him for profit right away. So yes, don't be afraid to take a profit for JJ McCarthy, but
sure,
I don't know. Overall, I feel good about this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. I agree. Go ahead, Trav.
No, I was going to say, I would kind of agree with your take too, Jax, that we are probably drafting him and valuing him at ceiling. But when I look at some of the guys behind him and I look at his age, like even if he is like replacement level or like the same value as some of these guys, I think his age is kind of the kicker there. Right behind him, I have guys like Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott. Like those guys are a lot older than JJ McCarthy, who's only 22 years old. And if I'm thinking he's going to give me like what they've given, then I think he's definitely worth that price with the age.
That's exactly
right. Like in those drafts too, like it does feel like you're drafting him a little bit high, but when you look at the quarterbacks on the board and you're in a super flex draft and maybe you want to build something that has a little bit of future value as well, not just today value, JJ McCarthy's usually kind of the best of that bunch because there's usually a little bit of a gap between the tier above him and then him and some of those older guys too. So I don't mind the value on him, even though it is ceiling, right?
Yeah, I guess the question now would be, if you're holding JJ, do you sell at that sort of quarterback 12 number? Do you sort of say, okay, well, you could get, I don't know, Goff plus or, Cam Ward plus. Like, do you leverage him at that price, or do you let it ride? Because here's the thing, you're right. I think that if he hits a sort of median outcome, his draft value is fair. It's fine. You're not upset about it because you're just drafting him among the quarterback 2s. You haven't really had to take him at quarterback 11 or 12 in any startup draft. You didn't have to pay that price in the rookie draft. So almost never have you actually paid the price of him as quarterback 12. I mean, maybe a few people listening have, but most people have not. So they're in for less. They can basically cash out at quarterback 12 value. But even if he hits a median outcome, you basically are fine at quarterback 12 valuation.
Yeah.
So the real question isn't, the scary floor, because I think the worst case outcome, of course, is a complete train wreck, which hard to see that. It's hard. Honestly, for me, it's really, really hard to see that. I just don't see that from the profile and from, first of all, if they thought that they might have that, I think they would have acted way differently in the offseason, bringing in different types of starters, different, maybe they would have flirted with Kirk Cousins again or something, as a secure backup type of thing. Who knows? I'm not saying it would have been Kirk Cousins, but I think they would have behaved differently than what they did. What was their backup? Like Sam Howell?
Yeah, they traded for Sam Howell during the draft, I think.
That's nothing. That's
who would also be awesome in this offense.
He would be incredible, wouldn't he? That'd be fucking sweet.
We feel like if Sam Howell was the starter, it would be like, oh yeah, I'm getting Sam Howell for sure. Let's get Sam Howell in the offense. So what are we talking about? Yes, just get JJ McCarthy. It's cool.
Yeah.
Or hang on. Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna ask though, Jax, kind of to your point, do you think that you could get Bryce Young in a first for him right now?
Would I take that? It's crazy.
Yeah,
I got a real life example for you guys, and I want your take on this.
Let's hear it.
Here's a trade offer that happened in my home league, 14 team single QB, so a little bit different in terms of quarterback value. I texted this to you guys, but nobody actually responded.
No.
All right, so team 1 receives JJ McCarthy, Roman Wilson, and the 107. The rookie
That's
draft
you.
hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I remember this
Team
one.
2 receives Trevor Lawrence, Blake Corum, and the 105. So they're basically moving up 2 spots in the first round, and they're swapping Trevor Lawrence for JJ McCarthy, which is kind of in the range we're talking about. Then it's like Roman Wilson for Blake Corum. So which side are you on? The JJ Roman 107 or Lawrence Corum 105?
Probably Lawrence side for me.
I'm on the other side. I think.
It's close.
I mean,
It's really close.
Corum's nice, but I think I'll just take JJ. If he hits, he's going to be huge, and he's going to be very, very pricey. I think if Trevor Lawrence hits, I think there's been enough, bad juju around him that some people will still not believe.
Yeah,
a lot of people will still not believe.
It kind of feels like JJ's downside is Trevor Lawrence, right?
Right.
Trevor Lawrence is stuck in the 12 to 24 range, and JJ's probably in the 8 to 15 range. Is kind of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, and the 105, 107 is hardly a difference there. I mean, I don't.
That's what I was thinking.
It just depends on what I can get at the 105. I really mean that. Like, this is
probably
obviously
Travion. It's probably Travion.
Then it's maybe I want it. I mean, it just depends on the situation. I need a little bit more information there because 107 is likely a Buka, which I love. So, just depending on what I need, I'd probably take the JJ McCarthy and whatever pick. What he gets the 107, right?
Mm-hmm.
JJ?
Team 2 would get the team that gets JJ gets the 107. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. All right, yeah, that's fine. I'll just take that.
So let's talk about what he does for some of these weapons, guys, because I think that's Justin Jefferson, I don't see him taking too much of a hit because he's just going to be peppered with targets and so much a piece of what Kevin O'Connell wants to do. But I throw it out to you guys. Could we see some bumps in the road with having a rookie quarterback? I was trying to take a look a little bit, and I looked in some of the routes that Justin Jefferson runs, and the only real thing that I found, which I think kind of actually plays into JJ's game, is that JJ McCarthy's game, sorry, not Justin Jefferson, more than 40% of Jefferson's routes were ins, outs, or curls, which are kind of generally timing routes. And so with a quarterback who can't do that necessarily, that could be a problem. But I think JJ McCarthy is really well suited for that kind of offense. So I'm not too worried about that. Do you see anything that brings Justin Jefferson down? Because if it does go bad, I could see a squeaky wheel situation, but I don't know, boys.
I have the opposite take, actually.
Ooh.
I think JJ McCarthy is the best quarterback that Justin Jefferson's ever played with. He's had Kirk Cousins his entire career. He had Sam Darnold last season. I think Justin Jefferson is the wide receiver 1 this year. I think he has the least competition and the best quarterback play he's ever had. And JJ McCarthy could be the guy that fully unlocks this superstar that's played with a bunch of mid quarterbacks his whole career. Let's be honest here. As much as we like Kirk Cousins, he's the definition of mid, right? JJ McCarthy, if he is that upgrade that the Vikings and he is, what does that mean for Justin Jefferson? His ceiling, right? I think it could get better. So I'm on the opposite side.
Yeah, and if anything, a young quarterback usually will latch on to, their premier number 1 target, a little less likely to go through read progressions and whatnot. So I think if anything, it hurts, Addison and Hockenson, but I don't think Jefferson will be adversely affected either. It remains a very, very concentrated target share that Jefferson leads. This is the best roster that Minnesota's ever had, I think, right? Top to bottom, offense, defense, coaching, the whole thing. So McCarthy sort of steps in to take the wheel of an absolute rocket ship. What was their they even upgraded the offensive line. I'm not
they got a couple. They got Freeze or Fries is one of the
Will
guys.
Freeze and Ryan Kelly up front. So they kind of shored up the middle. They drafted, Donovan Jackson in the first round. They still have Darisaw and Brian O'Neill at tackle. So they kind of just drafted up the middle and fixed the middle, which is where they had some issues. So if they can stay healthy up front, they've got a much, much better offensive line. I think it's really Addison and Hockenson that could be a little bit adversely affected. Especially Addison was a a touchdown scorer. You don't like to see too much of that. But again, if McCarthy's everything we hope he is, he also could even unlock Jordan Addison. They could be a 1-2 punch of epic proportions. I've got one bit of cold water to throw on. I saw a note that Ty Felton likely to play the entire year, mostly on special teams, is what they said. So it sounds like they're going to slow walk him in. But that could be. That's also, it's early to say that. I'm just saying they did say that.
Yeah, that's always what they say right now. With Addison, what's interesting?
They didn't say that about Puka. They weren't saying that about Puka right now. Let's just be real. They don't always say that. So I remember they were saying Puka might be the best thing we've ever seen in our lives at this time of the year. Just remember.
Fair enough. Thank you. All right. So with Addison, we're recording on July 8th. His court date for his DUI, if I'm not mistaken, is July 15th. So we're going to get answers as to whether or not Ty Felton's going to play for, 1, 2, 3 games, depending on how long the suspension is, if there is a suspension,
right?
Based on that court date. So, we might actually see him thrust into the action a little bit earlier than we expected. And, he might earn a role right there and then.
Rondale Moore,
I'm not giving up on him. I believe in Addison. I think he's a great player. Hopefully he's got his head on straight.
Rondale Moore's got something to say to you right now. I think you might want to check your
Rondale,
DM. Rondale,
come back to me. I drafted you in the second fucking round, Rondale. You were supposed to be so fucking good. So yeah, like. Sorry,
I'm getting Afro Man and Dre Dog confused. So they'll be like, "Listen, I'm sorry about the tale about wide receiver named Rondale."
I know, Jax. You made the last week for me so enjoyable because I've been listening to Afro Man almost nonstop.
Let's go.
So thank you. But I want to talk a little bit about Addison because short term, I'm not necessarily worried about him, but I think long term, I do have some worry that his price right now is not going to look great in a couple of years because. I've said it before on the show is that like he's coming up on a contract year. I don't necessarily think that they're going to want to sink a bunch of money into him when they have all this other stuff going on and they're eventually going to have to pay JJ McCarthy as well. So I'm not sure if they want to sink that much money into the wide receiver position with Justin Jefferson. So him being in that Kevin O'Connell offense, like I think his production, which isn't blowing anything out of the water, like he hasn't hit 1,000 yards. He's been very touchdown dependent. I think all of that is still Kevin O'Connell adjusted, right? So I worry about what he might look like in a different offense, especially because he doesn't have size on his side. You know what I mean? And I think he needs the right offensive coordinator to use him in a really good way. And I just don't think he's ever going to be an alpha, right? Like if we look at some of the deep target stuff, we love him deep and that's great, but we want him to do more. I was digging into what he did and how much of his work was on deep stuff, guys. In 2023, 22% of his targets were deep targets, only 27% of his yardage. 2024, 29% of his targets and over 54% of his yards came on deep stuff. So he kind of regressed on some of the non-deep targets that he had and kind of showed me that he can't necessarily be an alpha. He had that really good rookie season, but a large portion of that was with Justin Jefferson hurt. And so I think all of that tells me that if he's not going to be able to command targets in another offense and he's not going to be the second fiddle in a Kevin O'Connell offense, I'm probably out on Jordan Addison long-term, which kind of sucks because I like the player.
You got this, Joe, or you want me to take it?
Go ahead, Jax.
Look, I think it's if you go back and look at like a T. Higgins, T. Higgins certainly in year 2 spiked at 136 targets, but he's never been exactly a huge target hog either. I'm not saying that he's as good as T. Higgins, but T. Higgins playing alongside of Jamar Chase has been under 2 yards per route run 3 of his 5 years, I believe. Jordan Addison also below 2 yards per route run. It's not great, but when you play alongside Justin Jefferson, it's really hard to command the room. And I think there's some of that there. I don't know what's best for Jordan Addison, but I do know that an elite quarterback would help, and they haven't had that. And the elite quarterbacks unlock the secondary targets on a team. They just do. Now, what's cool about Addison is he's scored touchdowns on a team that wasn't like the most as a wide receiver too, to score 19 touchdowns in his first 2 seasons is really is really good. I mean,
I'd
it's not
I'd
fluke.
argue that it's been like one of the better offenses over the past couple of seasons, despite Sam Darnold, despite Kirk Cousins,
I'm just saying it's not the best quarterback
Yeah.
situation. You could find
No, totally.
15 better quarterback situations without hesitation. And that's okay. So it was not a top 10 quarterback situation ever. That being said, I think that just shows to his talent a bit, but I do agree with you. He's not a wide receiver one, but I think he's a high level wide receiver. We're talking Devontae Smith, we're talking T Higgins, we're talking these types of players that have been very good for fantasy, and he goes at the backside of all those guys. He's not the most expensive
Yeah.
WR2 in Dynasty. Every time I'm in a startup, I feel like I'm able to do a bunch of things. And there's Jordan Addison in the 5th round or 6th, right in
You
that
got a lot of
ballpark,
Addison.
where you're like, dude, I can get him again here. And it's not like you need him to be a wide receiver 1. You're drafting him oftentimes as your wide receiver 3 or 4, almost as a flex play. I don't have any situations where I have Addison. I'm like, dude, I really need Addison. In a lot of leagues, it's more of a deep situation. I will say, if you're in a shallower league, yeah, I think maybe Addison is a type of sell, because I think you're right. I don't think he ever elevates to a wide receiver 1 chair. Probably not. But I think he is a high level WR2 wherever he goes.
Mm-hmm.
I would just add that in his rookie year, Kirk Cousins tears his Achilles midway through the season, and they've got just an amalgam of quarterbacks named Dobbs and Mullins and whatever, and he still got 911 yards despite the Jefferson injury. That's a lot to put on a rookie with backup quarterbacks thrown to him.
Yep.
And in year 2, he missed 2 games, and Darnold was his QB, and he still got to 875 yards and 9 touchdowns. When we see back-to-back years of 9 and 10 touchdowns, the takeaway, I think, should be this guy's a touchdown scorer. This guy's a big play machine. And this guy, we can't bank on that. And there's certainly room for regression in that category. But given the QB turmoil that he's gone through and the mediocre QBs, is the same thing I was saying with Jefferson. Is like there's upside here too.
Yeah.
So he was the he was the wide receiver 30 in points per game in his rookie year. He was the wide receiver 22 in points per game in his sophomore campaign. That's very comfortable wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 territory, kind of on that border. That's where I think he should be. And he's a dude that has some upside. If he ends up on a different team 3 years from now, I mean, we can't bank on that. We don't know what's going to happen. But he's proven to be a very effective flex play plus. You can plug him in your wide receiver.
I'm not debating that. No, he's been fantastic. I just next year's his contract season, so next year could be the last season. And I think we're talking about what Kevin O'Connell does for those quarterbacks. I think him, even as a wide receiver 2 in a worse offense is probably not going to be so good, because what if he has a year with only 4 touchdowns on that? He's being drafted as the wide receiver 26 in startups right now. I think you're losing on that every single time, because if you think he is going to be getting you 8+ touchdowns every single year, I think it's just such a slippery slope.
I think he's a wide receiver 2-3, but he's got the youth. Your same point about JJ McCarthy tends to Jordan Addison. At wide receiver 26, he's going to pay off that ADP. He's been right around there. He's finishes right in that ballpark.
22 to 30. Yeah.
Yep. On
That's
top
exactly
of that,
where he should be.
I think the value floor on a wide receiver is going to fall out more than it is on a quarterback, though. You know what I mean? Despite the age. If he goes somewhere and he's
not
shit,
if he's good. And the other thing too is he's playing on a team where JJ McCarthy is on a rookie deal. They will have some money to throw at Jordan Addison next offseason if they choose to, because they won't have to pay JJ until the following season. That's even still. I mean, so yeah.
And Addison was a first-round pick, so next year is not necessarily a contract year. They could just exercise the 5th-year option. So we could be talking about him being a free agent 3 seasons from now, right? We're entering year 3, year 4. They could have him under contract through year 5.
Yep.
There's plenty of time for negotiation. We can't operate in windows that big.
Right.
Fine. What about TJ Hockenson, guys? A lot of people feel like he's kind of like one of those forgotten top 5 tight ends. I might disagree, but what's your thoughts?
Your voice got high right there. Let's hear
We'll get into it. Jax felt very smitten there on TJ Hockenson, and maybe I wasn't expecting the bullishness. So please tell me.
I mean, well, once you're outside of the Bowers and McBride area, I'm looking at nab value. And I think a lot of times right now in startups I've seen, people are like fading TJ to a point where it's like he's a value. That's what
Yeah,
I would say.
probably.
I don't know about I don't even know where he was taken in terms of tight end 6 or tight end 8 or tight end 10 in any of the drafts I did. I don't remember exactly where he fell in that hierarchy. I just know that there was, it often goes like this. It goes Bowers and McBride. Laporta is on his own little island, and then
Mm-hmm.
the 2 rookies go for some odd reason that I can't figure out. It's like, what
Maybe
the hell are we
Kittle in
doing
there.
there? No, it goes those 2 rookies first.
I'm looking at
Before Hockenson
Dynasty. I'm
started.
looking at Dynasty Data Lab, and it has Kittle right in front of those 2. But yeah, I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
splitting
sure.
hairs,
Kittle
Maybe
splitting
too.
hairs,
Kittle then as well, sure. But I mean,
splitting hairs. Yeah,
okay, yep, we're splitting hairs for sure. But then it's like there's a drop off of they
yeah.
just wait, and they're just like, I don't like any of these guys, which I get. But I think, once you start fading that next group far enough, I'm certainly happy to take Hockenson wherever he ends up landing because, especially in any sort of PPR. I mean, he's not a big player, but he does get targeted quite a bit. And in a concentrated target share, again, I think TJ should get a pretty good amount of targets this year. No?
Yeah, in 2022, he was the tight end 4 at 12.7 points per game, and in 2023, he was the tight end 2 up until the point where he got hurt in terms of points per game at 14.6. So he was having a career year, and then he tears his ACL, misses most of last season, comes back. They understandably ease him in. I don't know that he can leap into top 2, top 3 based on the talent that has entered the league since then, but I'm pretty comfortable with him as a top 5 dude. And I traded for him a bunch while he was hurt, and I'm very stoked to be harvesting those rewards this season.
Yeah, and as I look at those, like the Dynasty Data Lab ADP, shout out to them. I actually use them quite a bit for startup ADP. It's kind of right where he sits, but it just doesn't feel very good, right? It just feels like I kind of feel like he's a declining asset, to be honest, boys. Like that injury probably wasn't great. Obviously he was coming back from a big injury, but he wasn't very productive. Like he was like the tight end 17 in points per game over the 9, or he came back in week 9. So since then, and so I don't know, man. It feels like there could be maybe a little bit more upside to just keep waiting. If we're talking about like draft costs, just keep waiting for like guys like Tucker Kraft, David Njoku, even, which maybe in a dynasty lens isn't as good, but maybe some of those other young rookie guys like Arroyo or Ferguson or something like that. It feels for me like looking on Dynasty Data Lab, it's a 7th round pick for TJ Hockenson, and that feels a little rich.
Here's the thing, though. I mean, he's only 28 years old. He went back to back 133 and 124 target season, and then had 64 last year. Only played 10 games. Look, at 28 years old, he's been. I mean, just to give you some, he's been a 1.62 yards per route run for his career. He was 156 last year, coming off of injury. The 2 years
And that's
before that,
good for a tight end. I want you to
exactly.
specify that that's very good for a tight end. For a wide
Yeah,
receiver, we wouldn't be impressed, but for a tight
no.
end, that's a solid number.
Exactly. And 1.73 and 1.89 the 2 years before. Look, coming off injury, he didn't fall that far off. As a matter of fact, that 156 would be like his 3rd best season. It's like it's good. It's better than what he was in his first 3 seasons. So, I think he's okay. And he scored 1 touchdown in those 10 games. That really speaks to his points per game. I think some of the underlying stuff is good. It's not great. It's not like, oh, dude, buy TJ Hockenson. It's unbelievable. He's going to be awesome. I just think he's going to see probably 100 targets in his sleep. Unless he's hurt, he's seeing 100 targets this year. And if he gets 100 targets or more in that 120, 130 range like he was, the 2 seasons before that, then it's unbelievable. The wheels are all the way up. But, I think he's going to see over 100 targets. And at the tight end position at 28 years old on a team that we just said is elevated by the offensive coordinator, what more are you looking for?
Yeah, maybe I just don't necessarily see the 100 targets for him, but I think we will see. I think there's a lot of things up in the air for this offense with JJ McCarthy now at the helm, but we're excited to see it nonetheless. We're going to move on to your Patriots now, Jax. Very exciting. I mean, for you would be the one to tell me, but it feels like there is some excitement building around this team. Drake Maye is looking like he is the guy. There's been a couple weapons brought in around him. I took him in the 4th round of my Scott Fishbowl draft jacks to pair with Lamar Jackson and lock down those 2 super flex spots with some of that points per carry. So I'm starting to become more and more bullish on your boy Drake Maye as well. What do you think? I'll start with you, Joe, because Jax, I'm gonna let you wax, baby. What do you think, Joe, about the weapons that have been brought around Drake Maye? Like, we've talked about him as a dynasty top 10. I was earlier in the offseason saying that you guys were a little bit too steamy on him. I might not even be at that point anymore because I am smelling what you guys are stepping in here. So tell me about it, Joe.
Well, I mean, obviously, there's a pretty big revamp at the top here, right? Travion Henderson, first of all, pass catching running back that's been brought in as a check down option. Rhamondre was no slouch in that category. Neither is Antonio Gibson, but just from a check down standpoint, there's an improvement. Hunter Henry, they didn't really change much in the tight end room, but Hunter Henry's a very reliable target, kind of middle of the road, who always overperforms for fantasy. Brandon Diggs, like Diggs is actually a pretty interesting addition. I, like many, had kind of written Diggs off after his last year in Buffalo, but last year before the injury, he was averaging 14.2 points per game. That's a very solidly a wide receiver too. He's got pink bags of substances that he apparently is not getting in trouble for. Rumor has it that he broke up with Cardi B, so that's probably a good thing is for his career. He can focus on the yak instead of the wop. And
oh my god.
And I think Kyle Williams is an interesting addition as well, right? Like he's a dude that we thought was a sleeper, got drafted a little earlier than we expected, and like I don't know, everything I saw on tape from Kyle Williams was impressive. The underlying metrics were good, so and there's still some dudes that I'm like, not giving up on deep on that wide receiver depth chart. They've got Bourne, who's been solid. They've got Hollins, who is a pros pro in the run blocking. So, and Javon Baker, who I refuse to believe is bad. So I don't know. I think year 2 is shaping up pretty nicely. And not to mention, I don't want to bury the lead here. This dude's got easily a 500 to 600 yard rushing floor.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think that's kind of the foundation. That's really where we start, which is like, you can't miss that bad on a dude that's going to rush for that many yards. And he's shown the passing prowess to in limited action last year. I think he played like 12 games last year. I think he can easily get to 3,500 to 4,000 yards passing. So if you add those two numbers up and throw in something like 20 touchdowns total as a floor and like 30 plus touchdowns as like the ceiling, that's a very, very solid back end QB1 sort of in a, I'd say, relatively conservative projection.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, the Patriots are making the playoffs. Number 1.
Oh, he said it here first, folks. Maybe not first, but he said it here.
They're making the playoffs. They're a good team. They've got a good coach. They've got a good defense. They've spent money wisely. Their secondary is great with Gonzalez. I mean, they're going to be good. Their schedule is dog doo-doo. Like if you go down their schedule, they're going to be favored in like 10 games, which is crazy because they won 3 games or whatever last year. So yeah, they're going to have some very winnable games throughout the season. I am not so confident in their offensive prowess, though. I do think that with Vrabel as the coach, they're going to play to their strengths. They're going to be well coached, which means they're not going to be, just chucking it around all over the place. They're going to be winning football games. They're going to be playing complementary football, this Belichick brand of just smart play that is not going to necessarily be conducive. Now, they do get Josh McDaniels back. I think that does help with some of the quick passing game stuff. I do think Drake Maye will pay off because he'll be, running the football effectively. I said it on the show today. Since the year 2000, how many quarterbacks had a better yards per carry than Drake Maye did last year? Since the year 2000, how many quarterbacks have had a better yards per carry in a single season than Drake Maye? Care to guess?
I like 2.
I'm going to say 2 as well. I'm gonna go like Mike Vick and I don't know.
What's the carry threshold, Jax? That's important.
It was like 300 or something yards. I used yards as a threshold.
Yeah.
It was enough yards where it was like at least
Right.
I don't remember the
Yeah,
carry.
so it
So
would be
I'm
one
not
of those
looking at it.
bigger name guys who got more carries then.
It's one player, and it is Mike Vick in like 2004. And the top three are Mike Vick, Drake Maye, Mike Vick, and Mike Vick. So, that's
I'm pretty good at this, huh?
that's the top four since the year 2000 in yards per rush from the quarterback position. Just amazing. So, I mean, he was very, very effective and efficient with his scrambles. Let's face it, they were not, run plays. These were pass plays where he made the best of them. So I think
Fifth
he's a
most in the
super
league.
dude. I was super impressed. Y'all know I was like
Yeah.
anti Drake Maye. I thought he was a little erratic. I think that was I was wrong. I love being wrong. I said I win either way. So, but I do think after watching him as a pro, it was so impressive. But the weapons aren't there. I mean, you're talking Hunter Henry, Steph Diggs, and a cast of characters that are not
No,
going to get elevated.
but it's going to be progress, right? I think like
Yeah.
Stephon Diggs is not the wide receiver one of the future, but I think,
No.
if he has some of what Joe was talking about from last year, which was really good with the Texans, then I think he can be a perfect bridge wide receiver one. You know what I mean? Like he was more than that for Josh Allen. We saw what this kind of player, coincidentally, the exact same player coming in can do for a quarterback with Josh Allen. And I think he can help Drake Maye, right? And
Totally.
like, we love the rushing, and the rushing is going to be good. It's going to be there. We're not worried about that. We kind of really want to know what the passing is going to look like, right? And I took a look last year. He played 10 full games as a starter, boys. He was over 70% completions in 5 of those 10 games. For who was thought as going to be an erratic raw passer. His completion percentage over expectations was 18th best in the entire NFL. And among rookies, he was only behind Jaden Daniels. Jax, if you want to turn your camera off and have a little bit of a pluck, feel free, brother.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the point.
Look,
I think he's a good player. That's why I think they're going to be successful. And
6.7 yards per attempt last year too, right?
Totally.
Just pile on Draft's point, yeah.
And no ceiling touchdown games. No ceiling touchdown games either. Like he threw for 2+ passing touchdowns in 4 of those 10 games. So 2+ is going to start to be regular for him on top of that rushing, guys. And so I think it's going to be huge regression for Drake Maye on top of some positive signs we've already seen.
Yeah, I'm not super in on him as like a top end fantasy starter at quarterback this year, just because I think the offense will be muted just a bit. There'll be some rushing. It's going to be like we've seen this Patriots team before, where it's like a lot of quick passes, a lot of like efficiency. Nothing crazy over the top. I mean, they really don't have anybody to take the top off. I mean, you could look up and down. You're going to be like, yeah, I guess they don't.
Javon.
Good luck. But it's like Diggs and Kyle Williams. Kyle Williams is very good. Like if he ends up being good, that'll be a huge win, because then you go like Mac Hollins, Kyle Williams, Steph Diggs. You get the big guy that the blocker, and like then it makes sense a little bit.
And
if
Diggs
he's not good,
open.
then it's Pop Douglas or something, or Boutte. There'll be a little bit of a rotation there. I think Diggs is going to be the number one. There'll be rotation. They'll play the best player they think they have at that time. I think Trayvon's going to catch a lot of balls as well. I think they're going to scheme him into space. They obviously drafted him with purpose, where they picked him. I'm all in on Trayvon, as you know. And then I think they'll fill in weapons around Drake Maye as we go along, down the line. I think Hunter Henry's going to receive a lot. He received a lot of targets last year and was very effective with those targets last year. I think that's going to continue. So much as we do or don't like it, I think Hunter Henry's a buy, and certainly worth a pick late in any format right now. I think Hunter Henry's going to see the end zone quite a bit.
Yeah, touchdown upside for days with Hunter Henry. Like he's up there on the lunch pail scale too. So we like us Hunter Henry around here for sure.
Yep. Those two first names. Woo.
Yeah, old Hunter Hank. So the running back position, you touched on Trayvon in the passing game upside there, Jackson. It's absolutely there. We love Trayvon, and I've been a little bit less bullish than maybe you guys have, but I absolutely see it. I'm just a little bit worried about his long-term upside being kind of a bell cow necessarily. But I do see the fact that he is not a guy who's going to need a ton of touches to have extreme upside in fantasy football, which brings me to my guy Rhamondre, because I still want to believe, and I still think that he is going to be kind of the first and second down hammer for this team. We know that they're probably going to want to run the ball a lot, and I think that Drake Maye could maybe have like a bit of a subdued Lamar Jackson effect for these running backs, depending on how his rushing goes, where those running backs have a little bit more space with teams worried about Drake Maye. So I think Rhamondre is going to be sneaky valuable this year and in the short term, especially. Long term, he's probably one of those journeymen, season over season, gets bounced around and stuff like that. But I think for this season, if you need a flex fill in that's deep on the roster, Rhamondre's value is probably nothing right now. And I think he's going to outdo what you're going to have to pay for him, both in drafts and in trade. Anybody on that train, or is he just fully dead for you guys?
I think you're probably right. It's like the thing with Rhamondre, he is basically like last year's toy at Christmas, right? It's like he had just gotten a new contract. This team was committed to the running game, and then like there was just a big wet fart, right? And so it's like it's just not sexy, right? But he's still under contract. He's the veteran in the room. And Travion, split time in college, and that's when he was most effective. And I think it stands to reason that that's probably how they're going to want to deploy him, at least early in his career in the NFL. So I do think that there's value there. He's by no means, I don't believe, anything close to like a league winning player, but as like a flex play, I think he's solid and probably undervalued. But I'm not going to give like a ringing endorsement. I think you're right, though.
Here's a question. 2025, who scores more fantasy points, Najee Harris or Rhamondre Stevenson?
Najee Harris.
Easily Najee, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm bullish on Rhamondre, but I think Najee is going to be a thorn in Omarion's side all year long.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So then why are you like Omarion so much more than Travion? Why wouldn't you like Travion more?
I think long term, I think Omarion brings a lot more long term bell cow viability especially in a Jim Harbaugh offense, right? But I think this season's going to be tough sledding for Omarion. But I think it's going to be tough sledding also for Travion with Rhamondre, maybe a little bit less so than Najee to Omarion. But I think long term for Travion, my question is his ability to be a bell cow and take on the full load, where I don't have that question with Omarion.
I guess I don't even want him to. I just want a lot of high leverage touches and all the targets, and that's perfectly
But
fine.
you want Omarion to be the bell cow, though, right? Like Omarion's not going to.
The targets are a problem for him, though, too, potentially.
I know, but yeah,
you mentioned it yourself. They don't even throw to the running backs, right?
Correct.
So,
yeah, in a tandem role, long term, give me Travion Henderson if I know they're both going to be in a tandem role. But I don't think Omarion's going to be in a tandem role for more than this year.
Fair.
Yeah,
I think at that point, it is kind of counterintuitive. I don't love Omarion for this season, but long-term career, I do like him better. And Rhamondre is does he have 2 years left on his deal? But they
just signed him
cut him
too,
after this year. They just signed him last offseason, right? Najee's got a 1-year deal. So, we're talking about this all through a dynasty lens, of course. They're both great players, but I lean
no, they're all great players.
yeah.
Rhamondre is dope. I think Jax, when he was at his peak with the Pats, he's dope. So
it was 5 yards a carry, but he's huge decline in 23 from 5 to 4. And then the further decline in 2024 from 4 yards a carry to 3.9, 38 receptions to 33. He had 69 receptions. Very nice in 2022. So it's like he's seen his role and yardage and efficiency all sort of diminishing, right? So
as well as the entire offense, though, and organization, right?
Yeah,
and so I think there might be some outs for him on that, but
I agree. Yeah, there's definitely some outs.
Yeah.
You know who was good last year was Antonio Gibson on a per touch basis too. He's still alive, and you can't. He's the RB3 on the team. It's impossible. But if something were to happen ahead of him, especially even to Rhamondre, I think Antonio Gibson becomes a little bit interesting. Anyway,
Gibson's interesting because
just a running back on a 53.
Figure this out. He was so good his first 2 seasons. He had a little bit of a fumbling issue. Ron Rivera just buries him. And he must be the knucklehead of all knuckleheads to not be able to find the field, because every time he plays, you're just like, dude, this guy is good. Why doesn't he get more action, right? He can catch, he busts up big runs and big plays. And it's just like he never finds a consistent role. So he just must be just a clown behind the scenes.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I said I'm not buying Jax, not because he's not super fucking cheap for the upside. It's because I've bought Antonio Gibson so many times and he's just
Me
killed
too,
me
man.
so many times. Like from coming out of Memphis, Ty, my old co-host on True North, was a massive Antonio Gibson guy, and the seed was planted back then, and it's just been heartbreak. So I think before we move off Pats, I just got to say that Kyle Williams, you mentioned him. He's a sleeper wide receiver that you should be attacking. Because now that he's on the team and kind of settled in and the dust has settled from the draft, he's not being talked about too much, I don't see. So Kyle Williams is definitely a guy that we would be attacking in drafts. Atlanta Falcons, guys. This is going to be an interesting season for them. Kind of a big season for Coach Zach Robinson now that he's got Michael Penix supplanted in the starting spot. Bijan Robinson is, he went number one in all three of the live Scott Fishbowl drafts that I was in. I don't know where he went in either of your guys' draft, but kind of consensus 101 was Bijan Robinson in that format. Drake London, like he had a great season as well. And then Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts kind of round out the squad. But Michael Penix, guys, like earlier in the offseason, I've come off it now, but I had Penix like as a fringe dynasty quarterback one. Some things have shaken out and he's now in that kind of top 16 range for me. But like, do we think that his ceiling is to be one of these elite non-rushing quarterbacks, like in the vein that we talk about? Maybe not a Joe Burrow because he's kind of in his own tier of that, maybe, but in like that CJ Stroud kind of territory, in that kind of back of the top 12. Do we think that that is in the range of outcomes for Michael Penix as far as ceiling jacks?
I love Michael Penix. I can remember Felix Sharp on the undrafted years ago, like literally 3 years ago now, talking about how much he loved Michael Penix, how much he loved the raw skill, how much he was profiling as an NFL quarterback who could target anywhere on the field, outside hash. He could throw from the opposite hash to the other side of the field. Like he could do all these things that you just need to be able to do at the NFL level to be able to get the ball there, right? College game can sometimes, hide some inadequacies in the quarterbacks, whereas Michael Penix doesn't have those. So if he can put it all together, he has the physical tools to just be very, very prolific. I've heard people say he reminds them of Jameis. It's like, I guess so. That's fun. He's a big armed, quarterback who can deliver the ball down the field. And I think it's an exciting year two situation. Weapons all around. Drake London's a great weapon. Darnell Mooney's exciting. They have a tight end that might be worth something. A sleeper, his name, Kyle Pitts. I've heard good things. No, he's athletic. I've heard good things. He may be a player that could come, could surface this year.
Never heard of him. Yeah.
You look into him. Look into him.
Okay.
It's possible here with this. And it's
I love that. It's like
PITTS.
Drake London, he's awesome. Darnell Mooney, he's great, underrated. Kyle Pitts is there.
Yes, no, they
Yeah.
have him. He's there for sure. He's a guy. So yeah, but I mean, honestly, I don't know. Pitts was hurt at one point. We can make all the excuses and talk about it, but like again, potentially a weapon that could be unleashed in the right system. I've had my go around with Kyle Pitts, and we had the Salve, the ointment that
The
we
ointment,
sell
you
on
gotta
the
just put on your
site.
ointment and yep.
Yep, to make
Stay
sure
full
you're
on.
all set.
I
Yep,
got news for you guys.
absolutely.
That ointment didn't work. It still
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah, it still hurts, man.
Yep, the Kyle
Still
Pitts,
hurts.
the Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, and you may
So
still be afflicted.
So yeah, I really like Penix. I like his price. I mean, he also gets steamed up sometimes too. I mean, I think we've seen it in some startups where all of a sudden you're like, dude, Penix just went? Like, holy smokes. So yeah, he gets steamed up as high as the quarterback 12 in some of these drafts. But I've seen him go as late as, quarterback 15 to 20 in that ballpark where I think he's a great value.
The Dynasty Data Lab has him at quarterback 20 right now.
Wow,
I
that's
think
cheap.
I think that's about right though, because like we saw some Penix last year, and it was better than Cousins.
Who pulled it out?
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. The Falcons pulled out some Penix, and it was better than their Cousins.
Wow.
But I mean, he had a 58% completion percentage, right? He 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 7.38 yards per attempt. That's a solid number. We like that. But it's just all such a small sample size
Yep,
of this
small
particular
sample
Penix.
of Penix.
I
Yep.
just like to see more Penix before I get comfortable.
Moving all
With
in.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And going balls deep, if you will.
Yeah, if you're gonna
Thank
move all in, you want to see the full unit.
I do think it's telling. I do think, jokes aside, I do think it's telling that like they had many opportunities to move Kirk Cousins this offseason and they didn't do it. They refused to do it because like I don't think the Falcons are complete. Now, they still might, and if they
Oh,
do, that invalidates this argument. But I think there are some lingering concerns, and they want to have sort of a backup plan, and that's a very expensive backup plan in Kirk Cousins. But maybe they just didn't get the price they wanted for him. Maybe they're just not
The
all
other
in on him. Like
the other thing too is when you trade a player, don't you get hit with the cap? I mean, it's not like
you're
it's
eating
not
some
like
of it.
everything. Yeah, you eat some of it. I think they're like, look, if we're going to eat some of this, we might as well just keep them around unless we get something that really, we feel comfortable with. We're not just going to get rid of them to get rid of them. I think they were like, F it, But to your point, they didn't get rid of him. I don't know, man. That's an interesting point. I mean, he wasn't all that great last year. Let's
He's
put it
better
that way. He
than
was
Penix or Cousins? Penix,
Penix.
right? Yeah,
Penix.
yeah.
Yeah.
It
No.
was better. There was more zip on the ball. It's like instantly he breathed life into the offense, and that
Yes.
was exciting and fun. But Spencer Rattler did that in his first action with the
Sure.
Saints as well, right? And then
Yeah.
over time, it's just like he actually was in a much worse situation because there were no receivers left to throw to. But I just think it's always going to be a little bit different when a new quarterback comes in. He's got a stronger arm than the starter.
Yeah.
So I'm just not completely sold. I think 20 is about right. I think that's where it's a reasonable risk reward ratio, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The other part of it is that as a dynasty asset, he really doesn't have the rushing upside.
None.
Yeah, that's the thing with him. He doesn't have the rushing upside. So, what are you exactly getting? You're probably, there's only so much ceiling there.
Yeah, he's scraping top 12 at best.
Right.
And anything above that is just cake. But I think kind of, he can be one of those good fillers at quarterback too in Superflex, which is, of course, our predominant
Absolutely.
format. I think this offense is well suited, right? He needs to be slinging the rock. Drake London is nice for that. Darnell Mooney is phenomenal for that. He's a good sleeper this year, probably pretty cheap. And then Kyle Pitts. I think I am actually like maybe still afflicted. The ointment must not have worked, guys, because I am kind of down for Kyle Pitts this year because you can probably trade for him for fuck all. You know what I mean? And in drafts, if I'm looking here, he is going. I'm still scrolling. He's okay. No, he's the tight end 11 in the 10th round. I think that's pretty fair for the upside he presents at the position, right? And the athleticism that he could present. I know, Jax, that he's not one of these guys that's on the field at all times. But if I look at what this team is going to do and the fact that Zach Robinson wants to run a lot of 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers on the field, I can't even name the third wide receiver behind Darnell Mooney and Drake London.
I mean, it was Ray McLeod, but you can't name another one after that. And I challenge you without looking to name their backup tight end.
No, it's
way
probably
you're
lunch paily. It's probably pretty lunch paily.
Very lunch paily. I mean, it's so lunch paily.
Tell us.
You ready? Charlie Warner, which is Werner. I mean,
oh my goodness, yeah.
Charlie CHR. I mean, IE at the end. The whole Charlie Warner.
Cheese on that ham sandwich, let me tell you.
Yes, sir.
So I think Kyle Pitts is.
I'm pretty sure that's my financial advisor's name.
Yeah. I
Yes.
think Kyle Pitts is in line for some targets, guys. And so I don't think we can ignore that just because of what he's already done, because we've seen tight ends break out this late before. And we do know that he came in with insane expectations, which he didn't necessarily tank on right away because he did have 1,000-yard rookie season as a tight end, which is pretty good. It just hasn't met the expectations since. And so I think at that position, he's as good a shot as any where he's going in the back of the 10th round. And I'm willing to take that shot if I wait on the tight end.
Do you think you can trade for Kyle Pitts at value? Like, what's his value right now? Because I'm telling you, and the reason I asked this question, sorry to poison.
Yeah, no, people probably think the same way I'm thinking, though, is that it's finally going to happen.
Well, not only that, but as I have one share of Kyle Pitts across 15 dynasty leagues, I have one share of Kyle Pitts, and I paid a boatload for that pick. I paid almost an entire draft to get that one pick because it was the missing piece. I was coming off a championship. That was just the luxury piece that I wanted and needed. It was like, now I'm set at tight end. It was a promising rookie season too.
Yeah.
I'm not selling him. Like I don't have a choice. It's like I'm not selling him for like a third or a fourth or whatever the hell he's worth now. He's 24 years old. Every Kyle Pitts owner is just do yourself a favor, grab a pillow and scream into it, right? And just keep screaming until the market meets what your expectation is. You like there is a sunk cost fallacy here, but I just think he's like fine. He's my backup tight end. I just paid a bunch for Darren Waller, and I'm starting Darren Waller until I can start Kyle Pitts.
Maybe when you scream into the pillow, you should just scream TJ Hockenson, and that would be the way that you could fix this. I mean, wouldn't you take TJ Hockenson straight up for Pitts? Of course you would, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nobody's offering that. Are you kidding
Exactly.
me?
That's my point. So I mean,
Yeah.
there's ways out. I mean, would you rather Dalton Kincaid? Not really. I think I'd rather have Tucker Kraft for sure.
Definitely, yeah.
Right. And it's like, so then can you sell down for production? I mean, at this particular point, it's like, just find yourself a Hunter Henry to put the salve on,
Yeah, he's going to spread on that ointment for you.
Yes, he can. Yes. Hunter Henry can put on the Kyle Pitts ointment for you until Kyle Pitts comes along. That's how you play it.
Just put your face into the pillow, put the ointment on, and hope for some really good Penix.
Oh, man. Got to see the whole thing first, though. Got to see the whole thing first.
Yep. Now, this is actually pretty productive. I mean, reading between the lines, this is sage advice, actually.
I wonder how it stacks up to a gorilla.
We can't go back there. Not doing it.
Oh my god!
Not doing it. Not going to get me.
So not a gorilla.
Bear dicks, huh?
Yeah, I know. That's what I was gonna say. So not a gorilla, but the Chicago Bears seem to be packing on offense this season. We've said it on the show. We think Caleb Williams has no more excuses this year. Ben Johnson's been brought in as the head coach. Obviously, Odunze is coming into his second season. DJ Moore is still a top-notch wideout. And then they brought in Luther Burden, Colston Loveland, and made a bunch of additions on the offensive line, which might be the most important part, guys. So Caleb Williams, I think the breakout's coming. I have him generously ranked as my quarterback 8 in Dynasty. So this is me trying to be kind of a year early on that breakout and seeing all of the pieces coming into place for him. And I've talked about that, guys. Have either of you kind of moved in my direction on Caleb at all? Jax, I know you just fucking hate him. So please tell me if that's changed at all. Or
I do not hate him.
Still there. Okay.
I do not hate him. I just think that there's concerns, and we had these concerns with various quarterbacks where we wanted it to not be their fault, the sacks, right? Mm-hmm. The Justin Fields situation. There's been examples of this being a problem, taking too many sacks. Now, I don't know. Is it his fault? I mean,
lots of them are. I think lots of them are.
Yeah, we just have seen this too much where, I had people mansplaining to me that Justin Fields was going to take sacks in the NFL, and I was like, no. And yeah, he did. And we saw this a little bit with Jaden Daniels' numbers, and I was like, wait a second, am I going to fall for this again? And it was obviously not an issue. And so I don't think it's a direct corollary that, if you had a high sack rate in college, it's just going to transfer over as a pro. But I do think there's something in that data that you have to be careful with. And I think we see it a little bit more with Caleb because he's not as athletic as Jaden, right? Jaden does get himself into some situations where you're like, dude, whoa, what's he doing? And then all of a sudden he's out of trouble.
Exactly.
And you're like, right? So he gets away with it because of his uber athleticism, whereas Caleb probably got away with it a lot in college, but not as much against these, edge defenders in the NFL level. So I think he has to relearn that. He does have presumably the best possible coach to help him with that, and Ben Johnson to hopefully, I don't know if he's the best or not. We're going to find out that too.
Mhm.
But some of the underlying stuff was good. Look, his interception percentage was super low. He took care of the football. His completion percentage was basically 63%. Pretty good. There was some good marred within the bad. I think the play calling, the help he got from the sideline, right? All that was bad. The offensive line was not good. Well, now they fix all that. They bring in Luther Burden. They bring in Colson Loveland. They add weapons around him so that he can feel more comfortable. Let's see it, man, because now Rome Odunze year 2, DJ Moore, bro, that sounds really good to me. Like, if you just ask me, is that a good wide receiver core? It's like, yes. Like, what are good quarterbacks, Joe Burrow and, Patrick Mahomes doing in this situation? If you just plop them in with Ben Johnson and this whole thing, I feel like they're going to kill it. So, he's got to do something positive here. I think he will, but I'm certainly, waiting to see it. I want to see the full Penix here as well.
Plugging your nose a little bit.
A little bit.
Just before I kick it to you, Joe, just that underlying data you talked about, and kind of why I said there that he does create a lot of the sacks on his own, is because his pressure rate, like you would think that his pressure rate was massive. He was outside like the top 15. I think he was in like the 18 to 24 range as far as highest pressure rate. So it's not like his pressure rate was that huge. I think he was creating it by some of the escaping that he was doing and not knowing what he was going to do when he escaped. So yeah, that tells me that he created a lot of those sacks by himself, and that has to get cleaned up, hopefully by that offensive line. Joe.
Yeah, I mean, you just hit on the point that I wanted to hit on, right? Which is like, I can't put Caleb ahead of Drake Maye because last year, Caleb had much better weapons than Drake Maye did. And, the narrative, we talked about this on an early episode, right? The narrative was he's walking into the best situation any rookie quarterback has ever walked into, right? His pressure rate was 33.4%. Drake Maye's was 39.3%, right? Caleb Williams' pressure rate over expected was 3.99%, basically 4% pressure rate over expected. Drake Maye's was 13.04. Drake Maye took 8 sacks. Caleb took 19. Now, granted, there's a difference in games there, obviously, but I'm just saying the pressure to sack rate. This is the important data just to compare apples to apples. Caleb's was 30%. In other words, 30% of his pressures resulted in sacks. Drake Maye, 20% of his pressures resulted in sacks. And that's not like a great number either, but I'm just saying in a worse situation with worse wide receivers, similar archetype in like their, kind of scramblers, right? It's just like Drake Maye outperformed him and got rid of the ball more. And kind of beat him in just about every kind of per attempt category there is. Completion percentage, yards per attempt, just barely. All these categories, Drake Maye was better. So I can't put him ahead of Drake Maye. And now he's got this offense coordinator change, as does Drake Maye. And you got to think it's going to be better for Caleb. But boy, we have data and we can't ignore the data that we've seen because things aren't always going to be perfect and you're going to have bad coaches from time to time. It's like, can you still perform admirably or okay despite crummy coaching? We think he got top-notch coaching and that's going to fix everything, but he had great receivers last year and the results weren't great.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he's got rushing upside too. He almost ran for 500 yards last year. He was 6 yards a carry was Caleb. So, I mean, he's got some escapability as well. I think he's got to just do a better job with decision-making, in those situations because he takes too many negative plays. Again, a lot of that I can put on the coaching. I think the real question is now, I mean, we kind of saw the floor for Caleb Williams. I think that we would agree, like last year, look, if it gets worse than this, like this is, that's good. A comedy, right? That's a comedy. Yeah. We're expecting, elevation, and should he elevate, to what degree, we don't know. So fine. As a fantasy player, that's good enough. We're happy with Caleb as a fantasy player, the rushing upside, a little bit prolific. Okay, great. Doesn't turn the ball over too much. The real question is, Rome Odunze. I think this is the biggest question on people's minds. This is what we don't know what the hell it is. I mean, I think you probably saw the tweet I sent, sort of responding to Gattieri about the look at that. Getting some wine, Philip. It's great. with him comparing him to a bunch of top 10 picks at the wide receiver position over the last whatever years. And it's like, dude, he'll be fine. And then I sort of put another comparable players out there that were much, much worse.
Saw that tweet.
You know what I mean? And I think
Jarring.
look, the point of the matter, I think that I was trying to make personally was you can kind of muss with these numbers to support your bull or bear case. That's my point. Not that I'm against or pro. I just think that when you look at it, you can make a bad case and a good case. Catch rate and all the stuff, he was not that good. So it's like, what's the real Rome Odunze? I asked both of you, what do you think? Are we in? I mean, actually, Trav, I know you're in. Joe, what do you say?
Man, I hate this so much. I mentioned this on a podcast a few weeks ago, but like when you're drafting a wide receiver, you're also drafting their quarterback, right? And so the book on Rome Odunze is so contingent upon the question of whether or not Caleb Williams is actually good, because I think Rome's got all the talent to be a productive wide receiver. And I think that, it could just have been all a result. We just throw it all out, right? It's just a bad offense coordinator. What the hell was his name?
He's a rookie.
He was a rookie. They were both rookies. So Rome's one of those where it's like, I'm not selling. I've gotten plenty of offers. I got big offers early in the offseason. Then after they drafted Luther Burden, it's like those offers got a lot worse.
Yeah.
I'm just not selling. I'm not buying. I'm holding the shares that I have and, just hoping for the best. But I'm nervous about him. I'm nervous about Caleb. I'm not sold on either. I tend to believe in Rome more than I do Caleb, but unfortunately his fate is tied to Caleb's.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. They're both top 10 picks. I can't believe that they went 0 for 2 on 2 top 10 picks.
Here's my question to you, Trav, because I know that you're pro Rome Odunze. So my question to you, Trav, is which outside wide receiver in the last 5 or 10 years or 2 years or whatever do you point to and say that's where Rome Odunze is going? Like I think T Higgins, like
I think
Collins?
he's
like
I think
is he
well
that
Nico's more than just an outside wide receiver too, and I think Rome can be one of those versatile guys. He played 36% slot last season, and he was their best wide receiver if you look at some of the underlying stuff in the slot. And so to me, I'm not sold that he's only going to be an X wide receiver, and part of what makes me not sold on that it is the fact that Luther Burden and Colston Love are both a little bit banged up. So I think that helps Rome Odunze, especially this year. I think DJ Moore is well suited for the slot as well. Last year was a down year for him, but I'm not necessarily sold that Ben Johnson's not going to move all of these guys around and it's not going to be awesome for these guys. So I don't know if I'm lumping Rome right into that just X wide receiver situation, because I think he can do it. Like if we look at some of the slot stuff that they did, like he had the most targets per route run on the team from the slot. We look at the catch rate was bad, but the catchable targets were not great either. He had the most yardage. He had the most yards per route run, most yards per target. And so he was a pretty good wide receiver from the slot last year, despite not doing it a ton in college. So I think that's in his range of production outcomes. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm so bullish, is that I think he can do both of those things. And I think, Joe, kind of to your point, I don't necessarily think that he is so, like, I think Caleb can be bad and Rome can still be good because of that departure of Keenan Allen. Like Keenan Allen was targeted at like probably a top 10 rate in the league when he was healthy last year. And I think that's a lot of work that's being left behind. Obviously different offense with Ben Johnson coming in, but Ben Johnson has shown with some of what he's been able to do with 2 tight end sets versus 3 wide receiver sets. That's a whole nother conversation, but he can adapt his offense to the players that he has. And I think Rome was part of the draw for him coming there, and Luther Burden was kind of an addition, and Colston Loveland was an addition, as opposed to those guys being an indictment on his thoughts on Rome Odunze. So I think everything is looking fine for me for Rome Odunze, and I'm still super bullish on him.
Question for both of you.
Yeah.
Which Bears wide receiver do you have the most shares of? DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, or Luther Burden?
Probably Luther almost at this point, but I do have quite a bit of Rome. I don't know off the top of my head.
Luther Burden.
Yeah. Me too. Me too. And who do I hope succeeds the most? And who do I have the most faith in? It's Luther Burden, because he's got the longest runway. He was chosen by this coaching staff right? And he feels like analogous to what we've already seen from a Ben Johnson offense in a role that we want to see. So I don't know, man. I'd say I'm most bearish on more long term for the Bears. Age plus
Not going to be
attitude.
there.
Last year, like he just might not be there. To your point you made several weeks ago, Trav. Rome, it's too early to write the book on him, and it's a reset. But boy, like as we've talked about, if it doesn't happen this year, that price is going to plummet.
Yes.
Burden's got the most runway to hold value and also the most room to grow in value. So he's therefore kind of the best asset to own from a value standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say, Trav has some trepidation with Jordan Addison as a future player in this league. But Jordan Addison, first round pick. Jordan Addison was a very, very productive college receiver, an elite, profile coming out.
Yeah, Pitt and USC,
outscored Rome Odunze in the UN score wide receiver model, and as a rookie, outperformed him on a yards per route run basis at 1.50, where Rome Odunze 1.18. So not great underlying stats for Rome Odunze. Certainly has to turn it around fast. Otherwise, my point is, I don't see him as a Nico Collins type of player. I see him well below the level of a wide receiver 2 on his own team, which is, below the T. Higgins, Jordan Addison type of player. I mean,
below
at some
T
point,
for sure, but not Addison for me at all. Like I think there's so much different players.
He has to outperform him before he can be better than him. It just has to happen once, right? What do you mean? In order for him to be better, he has to outperform him.
I guess for him, well, not necessarily. Like he can be a more talented player and not have yet performed better. You know what I mean?
He will at some point, is what I'm saying. At some point, he will have to be better in order to be better. And so far, has not been better.
Easily will. I think he
easily
will outperform Jordan Addison.
Huh. We'll see about that.
Jordan Addison's got 19 career touchdowns through 2 seasons.
Yeah, when is that going to happen?
I think Rome Odunze, you don't think Rome Odunze has 9 touchdowns in his profile? Are you guys kidding me? He got 14 end zone touchdowns.
He absolutely does. He absolutely does. I'm just saying,
until it happens, it happens.
Jack's point, this is me sucker punching you and kicking while you're down.
You guys are getting too locked in
already
to what
done it,
he's
dude.
done. Yeah,
800 and 900 yard seasons, 9 and 10 touchdown seasons.
One 900 yard season, one 875 yard season, and it should be better than that in
the thing
such
that
a good offense.
The thing that you think that Rome Odunze might be able to do because it's in his profile, Jordan Addison has done 2 years straight in his first 2 years in the league.
No. I think Rome Odunze can do way more than 900 yards and
I think so too.
I think
but until he does it,
he can do 1200. Yeah, but is it not okay to just take a shot on a player that you kind of think has that profile? Like, and if we're looking at the long term, if we take the team out of it,
who's more expensive in Dynasty?
Let's take a look here.
It's Rome Odunze.
I already know the answer. Yeah.
Yes, it's Rome Odunze.
Because Jordan Addison's wide receiver 26. Rome Odunze
like 24 or 23. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he's at 19 on Dynasty Data Lab. But that gap is the gap in production that I think that Rome Odunze can provide over Jordan Addison.
You have to think.
Do I ever see 12? Do I ever see 1,200 yards in Jordan Addison's career? Not necessarily. Do I see those 9 and 8 touchdowns as maybe being an outlier by the time he's all said and done? Yes, I do see that.
9 and 10.
Was it 9 and 10? I thought it was 8 and 9. But anyway, those are going to be outliers, boys. And attaching yourselves to 9 and 10 touchdowns.
It'd be kind of cool if Rome Odunze could have an outlier season.
Fucking wild to me, guys. It's so wild.
What's wild is that my point is that until Rome Odunze does something to that level, it's all projection. There's nothing there yet.
But I'm just confident in his ability to do it with some of the things that are around him, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
Why is it not okay? Like, who?
I wish you luck.
Bet? Like, who do you think is more likely to give us multiple 1,000-yard seasons in their career, Rome Odunze or Jordan Addison?
I'd say it's pretty close.
I'd say it's very close.
The way that you guys were just talking about Addison, though, didn't seem that close, though, right? Like, who do you think? Okay, Addison has done it, but who do you think in a vacuum is the more likely wide receiver to have multiple seasons of double-digit touchdowns? Odunze. It's Odunze, guys.
Yeah, I think
yes,
as a red
Because
zone
if he does
presence,
it this
it's
year,
possible.
you're never getting him for the cost that you can get him for even right now. You know, if he does that this year
His
and he
upside's
shows that
higher.
he can
Good
be an
point.
alpha target getter, like he is
Yeah.
going to be way, way more value. Jordan Addison's not even going to sniff his jock strap if he does what I think he can do.
That's fair. And I think what you're basically saying, just to put in a sentence, is Rome's upside is higher than
Upside
Addison's, we
wins
think,
championships.
but his floor is
Obviously
undeniably lower.
Yes.
Undeniably lower. We've
Is it?
already seen it.
He put up like
Yes.
700 plus last year as a rookie in a dog shit situation. So if
Addison's been in dog shit situations in back-to-back years.
Yeah. What's the?
I mean, whatever. They
yeah,
were a
but that
winning team
that
last
might
year,
be
but
his ceiling. Like that might be his ceiling.
I don't know, man.
It's definitely
Dobbs and
not his
Mullins.
ceiling.
Yeah, I just think Addison. He's also behind the best wide receiver in the league.
Yeah.
But if he gets out from under that best wide receiver in the league, I think he's going to get exposed if somebody tries to target him as their number one target, which is a
Listen, Rome's numbers could have been. I want to just put this to bed. Rome's
I told
numbers
you guys we were
could have
fighting
been
tonight.
could have
I'm
been
not even
way.
fighting. I'm just surprised that
Yeah,
you know
no,
your whole
Rome's
take
numbers.
is
Listen,
a projection.
I mean, here's
That's
just
all
the
I'm
fair
saying.
take, right? I'm just
That's
getting
all I'm
a
saying.
little frustrated because Rome's numbers could have been way better. We'd be talking about him in a completely different light if Caleb Williams hadn't missed him so badly on a couple of deep throws last year where he was wide open, right? So it's not fair. Like literally, two of those connect, and all of a sudden his underlying metrics look completely different, and it's like wheels up for Odunze. So I don't want to like poo-poo Odunze. All I'm saying is like I'm nervous. And it's not just because of Rome, it's because of Caleb. And hopefully Ben Johnson fixes everything. But I don't think it's fair to assume that he has. And I don't think it's fair to give Rome the credit for doing it. And I don't think it's fair to give Caleb the credit for making the jump until it's all happened. I just need to see it.
Here's the facts. So far, Rome Odunze has been an unplayable fantasy producer. You can't play him in your starting lineup, period. And in 2 years, Jordan Addison has been startable in the flex for almost any version of any lineup in fantasy football. That's the facts. Now, that could change. I understand Rome Odunze was a top 10 draft pick. I get that. I understand that he was a precocious, college player. He did get the benefit of playing with a full Penix, though. Just saying.
I'm looking up some Jordan Addison stats because I'm just gonna try and talk about his week-to-week consistency, but I don't want to because I want to end on the Penix, so we're gonna keep it going.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't do you very much good.
Gotta finish on the Penix.
A guy who scores 9 touchdowns has pretty good weeks almost every week. I mean, my point, I'm not saying that he got home every week. I'm saying that when you looked at it, you're like, I can start him this week. He's a startable wide receiver.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's
For
what I'm
He's
saying.
he's a hold. He's a hold. He's not a buy. He's not a sell. It's just
that is true for sure. That is true.
There's far less projectable upside from where they are right now in Jordan Addison compared to Rome Odunze. Obviously. Yeah, obviously you bet. The point is you need the upside. Like if Jordan Addison just keeps doing what he's doing, it's like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's all right. I got Devontae Smith. That's cool. Now,
not
if
even
he
almost
pretty close. I mean,
pretty close, yeah.
Wide receiver 2. What was he? Wide receiver 22.
Like,
that's okay.
Devontae Smith to me is a
1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns.
He's a bit of a disappointing top 10 pick at wide receiver to me, and I'm an Eagles
obviously
fan.
Yes,
but which to me says Jordan Addison doing that is disappointing as a round 1 wide receiver.
It's okay.
Can we talk about the running backs on the Bears?
Yeah, let's do it because I'm very interested in that conversation. I've been thinking about Roschon a little bit more lately, boys, as much as I love me some DeAndre Swift in this offense this year. So Joe, why don't you tell us what we're going to talk about here?
I'm just here to wave the white flag because I in previous episodes have been doubting Swift. I've been hating on Swift, thinking Chubb was going to go there and crap all over Swift's parade. And I don't see any other bodies out there that are going to take Swift's job unless they're already in that backfield by way of Roschon Johnson or my guy, Manungai. But like, I think Monunga is more likely to take Roshan's role than he is to take Swift's role,
True
and
that.
he's just probably got this thing on lock unless he falls flat on his face or just continues to just not tough out those yards, continues to run out of bounds, continues to play soft, which he's been guilty of his entire career, checking out as a running back. So, like, I think for this year, Swift, I hate to say it, I think he's a really, really big value. And like, I don't like the player, but the ADP is really good in dynasty startups, in trade value, in redraft leagues, in best ball leagues. Like, ugh, it feels bad. But if we're operating under the presumption that, Chicago's going to be drastically improved under Ben Johnson, then it just goes, it follows that Swift is going to be a pretty decent value this year. So this is me giving up the ghost. I'm waving the white flag. Swift is probably a buy at cost right now. And I'm sorry, DeAndre, but you got to really prove it this year.
Dude, why are you saying that like you just kissed Lois Einhorn? Like DeAndre Swift is dope. Like
I just did a full heel turn on because I gave up on him so long ago and I've hated him now for like 3 years. And now I'm just like, God, I have to
yeah,
like you
well,
again.
I
Fine.
get the health and shit, but when he's going, he's so sick to watch. Like I thought even that Eagles season, like you're talking about him kind of being soft and checking out. That season he was with the Eagles, he was a fucking dog in the run game. So I don't know. Like I totally get it. Like he's a hard asset to like push the button on because it's so scary. But like I like the player a lot just because I like him. Jax.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this. How many times has he finished outside of RB2 in his career?
Ain't never.
0. So yeah, he's been a top 23 running back every single season. That includes the first 2 years in Detroit when he only played 13 games in each of those years.
We're talking
He was
points per
actually
game. Yeah. We're talking points per game
finish.
or finish. Okay.
Yeah, total. Even as with only 13 games, he finished as a top 20 running
That's
back in both
amazing.
half PPR and PPR in those first 2 years in Detroit. The third year in Detroit, only 14 games, finished as the running back 22. The aforementioned year in Philly, PPR running back 20. And then last year in Chicago, the PPR running back 19. I've been saying he's a 200-point scorer. Depending on how you look at it, he scores. I've one league he scored 180 or whatever, in the other league 240. But he basically scores 200 points every single year. Finishes as a top 20 running back, and now he's basically got the whole backfield to himself. I mean, unless you think Monungai and Roshan, who's never done anything and has never been given anything, actually eat into his production. I don't think they do. I think they spell him at most. So yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable.
Dope.
Trav wins this one by a landslide. He's been calling for the buy DeAndre Swift all off season. You and I both were a little bit like, I'm not so sure they're going to draft, Genty at one point. He's dodged every bullet imaginable, and DeAndre Swift is standing there, and he's in a Ben Johnson offense again, and will find himself in that Jahmyr Gibbs role. Plus, it just couldn't be any better. I mean, he's got RB1, top 12 upside for sure in this offense.
And not only that, but he's also pretty sheltered in his role because
Yes.
Roshan and Monangai aren't bringing to the table what Swift does for that offense.
Right.
So, like, I think they're more competing with each other, and Swift has his own sort of silo of production, even if it's not like a workhorse role.
Exactly.
It's high value touches by way of pass catching
Exactly. Exactly.
just the big play guy.
Yes,
Yep.
it's so good. And if you held on or bought low, you are feeling really, really good about holding the DeAndre Swift bags right now.
Yeah, totally. And I appreciate you confirming all of those priors for me, Jax, because some of the cognoscenti had leaked in a little bit. I think people have been kind of thinking about the Gibbs Montgomery role as something that maybe Ben Johnson might bring over. And that's probably where the intrigue on Roshan comes from, because he has a bigger body. And so that's something I've been
That's
thinking
fine.
about the last
Yeah.
week or two. But I've also been thinking like he's not going to put enough of a dent in Swift's work that I care, because he is
No.
not David Montgomery to Jahmyr Gibbs.
And
No.
not only that, but if you're talking about Gibbs versus Montgomery, who would you rather have?
Right.
Gibbs,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
You want the Gibbs.
100%. So real quick on the tight ends, boys, we got one more team left in the Carolina Panthers, but Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland. I did mention that Loveland's been a little bit banged up here, guys. I've mentioned my thoughts on him for Dynasty for months now, it feels like, so I'm not going to go there. But does that make Cole Kmet like a sneaky early season producer? Do you think Cole Kmet was already going to be that potentially? Jax, I see you with a little bit of a snarl there, so maybe not. So why don't you elaborate on that?
I mean, the snarl's all you really need. It's
That's pretty good. Yeah. For any
I
of our
mean,
listeners, it was the perfect snarl if you're on audio.
Somebody
yeah,
farted in the room Jax was in.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
gross. Cole Kmet, yuck. Yeah. I stepped in some Kmet over here. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
ugh, you know, it
Somebody
just doesn't even.
somebody
Yeah,
had a big Komet on the garage floor in there.
yeah, yeah, and I stepped right in it. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
come around the corner, boom, I step in a Kmet. Yeah, it doesn't sound good. You don't want any of that. I mean, you know, I don't think he ever. You know, we talk about the just a guy tight end. Isn't Cole Kmet exactly that? Like he's just a
Yeah.
lumbering body. I mean, he never was special. So with Loveland there, I feel like it just sort of caps his receiving upside anyway. Maybe possibly he gets there in a Tunyon touchdown way, but yeah, I mean, I'm not interested in Cole Kmet at any price really. I'm sure wherever he goes, I could find a player I prefer with more upside or even more floor. Certainly Hunter Henry greater than Cole Kmet for sure. And I got to imagine they're somewhere close to one another back there in the big lunch pail having tight end area.
I'm going to go on the record here and say I think Cole Kmet has a better fantasy season than Colston Loveland does for two reasons. One, Loveland's still a rookie,
Yeah,
and
possible.
Kmet is a good blocker, right? He's a do-it-all tight end,
Yeah.
and he's good enough as a receiver and really good as a blocker. So I think that keeps him on the field, and that's really all he needs. That being said, there's no chance either of these guys is a top 3 option
Yeah.
in terms of targets on this team. So, like, I don't think we're really interested for fantasy purposes in either of them. And I'm not really interested in any Chicago tight end in the near term until DJ Moore leaves.
Yeah, Cole
Yeah.
Kmet sort of spiked in 2023 and gave us some underlying stats that made it seem like he was going to pop in 2024. Like he'd gone from like, you know, just yards per route run in his rookie year, you know, 0.93, then 123, then 127. In 2023, 169. Nice. But all the way back down to his worst ever 0.91 yards per route run last year. You know, never been a yak guy, only 4 yards per reception of yak. So doesn't make those big plays. Not a tight end I'm looking for. Yeah, he might, and I don't necessarily disagree with you. He might outscore Colston Loveland, but if that happens, that's just because Colston Loveland wasn't ready for prime time, and you know it's sort of like they leaned on the veteran. But I don't think that there's any upside. Like he's never had more than 90 targets. I mean, I don't know, man. This is just not a player I would ever target because there's really no upside. You're just basically banking on floor, and I don't want anything to do with that.
I think Hunter and Henry is like the perfect career arc for Cole Kmet. Like you remember Henry, he had a big couple seasons with the Chargers, then he got a big contract, faded into oblivion, and now he's kind of coming back into being one of those pesky guys that we can start from time to time. I think Kmet could end up being one of those guys. He's just in that valley right now. So probably just like a hold on your bench in a tight end league. But I see what Joe sees early in the season. Like, and I've talked about it as well, thinking that, and now it's kind of out of the water with Loveland and Burden both being a little bit banged up. But I was talking about how they're going to want to try and work Burden into those 3 wide receiver sets while using more 2 tight end sets with Loveland and Kmet. But I don't know how that's going to look necessarily now. So I think there's options for Ben Johnson, right? He can go more 2 tight end. He can go more 11 personnel if these guys are heavy. And so I think that all bodes well for the offense and maybe all bodes well for Caleb. But I don't think it bodes well for specifically Colston Loveland in year 1. So I'm kind of taking Burden and Loveland as whatever they do in year 1 is kind of a cherry on top at this point now, which kind of sucks with where we drafted them. But I think we were looking at the long term for these guys anyway.
Yeah. I will point out Mike Clay has Loveland slotted for 90 targets, and Kmet
Ooh.
slotted for 27 targets.
Wow.
So
Buried.
Clay thinks Kmet is absolutely buried. I would say his
That's
contract
crazy.
and blocking ability says otherwise. I know I have a hard time
Especially given
with that one.
What's the wide receiver split?
but especially given his propensity for fading rookies in his projections. That's a huge
I know.
projection.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
let's
he's
hear the Mike
top
Clays.
10 pick. For the wide receivers, DJ Moore 133 targets, Odunze 122, Luther Burden 66, and Zacchaeus with 8. Devin Duvernay, who I didn't even know was on the Bears, with 3.
That just means that they're going to throw the ball a lot, right? And so if they throw the ball a lot, I kind of can see that, right?
They're
Depending
going for
on
554 targets. That's kind of like what you expect, right? Somewhere in the 500s, mid 500s. So
because
that's
Burden
a
has a harder
big
time breaking in than
discrepancy.
Loveland. I think Burden could have a harder time breaking into that target tree than Loveland
Interesting.
Yeah, Burden's got a lot to
in year
prove.
one.
I think just all these guys, even DJ Moore has a lot to prove after like the fits he threw last season.
Yeah.
Like from a team standpoint, like I think everyone has a lot to prove on this team. Rhamondre, when you see him do it, like everyone has a lot to prove except Cole Kmet, incidentally, right? Who's just like kept being himself. He just kept being himself.
Brings that lunch pail every day. He don't got to prove nothing.
We can know what he is.
Right.
Every challenge has been Kmet.
That's really good. That's really good. That's really
Thank
good.
you.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good job.
All right, boys. We got one more team to get through in the Carolina Panthers. We're going to try and do it a little bit quick, although I think there's some interesting talking points here for them. Bryce Young being the main one. He had a great back half of the season last year. I think he's got us wondering whether that was a sign or whether that was a mirage, because we kind of want it to be a sign of things to come, with Tet McMillan being there now, Chuba Hubbard showing that he can be a bell cow running back. What are your guys' thoughts on Bryce Young per se? I asked earlier when we were talking about trading one quarterback for Bryce Young in a first. I can't even remember who it was. But what's your guys' take on Bryce? Because I kind of like him for the cost. He's like, probably barely a top 20 quarterback at cost. And I think he can produce pretty big on that.
So my take is basically like, I hope it pans out, but he's a QB3 until further notice, and he needs to be treated as such, right? Like,
Yes.
the second half of last year, there were some magic moments. You kind of started to see some of that Alabama Bryce Young. I'm thinking of like a couple big sort of comebacks and exciting games. So it was like very nice to see. And obviously, he got a big weapon upgrade. Canales did his thing that he does with quarterbacks. So it's trending in the right direction, but I mean, he had bottomed out so hard in like September of last season that like it could only go up from there. I can't help but think of like when he got benched for Dalton. Yeah, there's this quote. He said, like they were asking him about getting benched. Like, at this point, I'm just putting my faith in God. And I was just like, oh man, that's a bad sign.
Yeah.
And then when he got his chance again, he's a completely different guy. It's like
Hallelujah.
Canals pushed. Hallelujah, praise God. It's the Canals pushed all the right buttons for this guy, and when he got on the field again, he was a completely different player, and it looked like a completely rejuvenated team. So I want to believe, but I do have like a season and a quarter of very, very, very bad data, and a guy that we saw improvement from, and it's like, how much was just like, whoa, this is a passable NFL quarterback. That's great, right? Is it great, or is it just okay? So that's kind of where I'm at, and I hope it's great, but he still has, he's whatever, 5'10", and he's got these other upgrades, but I'm not betting on it. I'll take him in best ball as my QB3, but whenever I have him on my team, you better believe I have two other quarterbacks there, and he's just like a YOLO upside play.
Yeah.
It's probably right.
Yeah. I mean, I tried to look for some statistically impactful things I could say positively for him. Like, here's this or whatever. But, his 2023 season and 2024 season were very close to one another in terms of final finish. Now, to Joe's point, if you look at his splits, he got better. If you look at every month, he got better. Every each quarter, if you look at each quarter of the season, just his quarterback rate, 44.1, 78, 85, 94. So,
Yeah. Finished at 82.2 on this season. Yeah.
Exactly. So he was bad, awful, got benched, came back and was, fine, right? You know what I mean? Like, who's getting excited about an 82 or 85, quarterback rating? Not great. On top of that, they didn't necessarily win. They were, in the final half of the season, they were 4-6. Again, nothing like outstanding. His interception percentage, his touchdown percentage, not great. Like, nothing is all that great. So when it comes down to it, it's not like I have these huge signs where it's like, dude, it's all happening. I do think it's probably, like you said it best, man. He's a quarterback 3 until further notice. That when you asked, it was JJ McCarthy in a first for Bryce Young, and
Right.
I hesitated, and the reason I hesitate is because I just don't believe in Bryce Young. I believe that he's got a year here where if he doesn't put it all together, that his career as a starting quarterback in the NFL is in jeopardy.
Yeah, and I think what he did last season is he showed us that there is a little bit of ceiling there, and I think a lot of that comes through Canales. I think we're hopeful with Tet McMillan that he can support that ceiling turning into maybe a little bit more consistency. But I think what he didn't do last year was show us that the floor is any safer, right?
Right.
Like he didn't show us that, he's a guy who's going to be putting, 16 to 20 points every game, well, 16 to 20 plus every game, you know what I mean? Despite doing that down the stretch last year, we still don't have that kind of confidence, right? From week 12 on, he was putting that up despite one game where he was under 16. But 23.6, 27.1, and 36.4 were his 3 best games in that 7-game stretch. And the 36.4 point game was in week 18. So it didn't mean anything for us fantasy gamers. So yeah, it's hard to, like, I'm kind of like hopeful for the guy because I like Tet McMillan too. I like Dave Canales, and I think that those guys can push him forward, but it's to what level, like you guys said. So be cautious with Bryce Young. I might put him in the back of the quarterback 2 range, and just thinking that he's more cemented. He's got those weapons. Canales probably has a little bit more confidence in him. But it is a scary proposition.
From a dynasty value standpoint, I agree with you. He could be in the 23-24 range, and that's just fine. But in terms of like dudes that are going to score and where he's going to finish in scoring, I think he's like probably, the bet is outside of that top 24, but he's so young. I do just want to bring up one thing.
Yeah.
Right. We're talking about Caleb Williams and Drake Maye's pressure rates and pressure to sack rates and pressure rates over expected. Right. So Bryce Young's, let's go back to Caleb Williams real quick. Caleb Williams, as I said earlier, 33.4 pressure rate. Bryce Young's 35.9, basically 36%. So higher. His pressure rate over expected. Again, Caleb Williams about 4%. Bryce Young at 7%. So it's not like it was easy for him. And then his pressure to sack rate, Caleb Williams, 30%, Bryce Young, 18%. So like he kind of outperformed Caleb Williams from that standpoint. So it's like, if we're going to give Caleb the benefit of the doubt, I think we probably need to give it to Bryce Young too. I do think we believe Caleb's ceiling is higher for a number of reasons. But
yeah, a lot of reasons.
It's not like it's been easy for Bryce Young. I mean, hell, his best wide receiver last year was a 34-year-old and a 7th round pick. Those were his two 7th round picks, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, one undrafted guy and a 7th round pick. One of those dudes was 34 years old. So it's not like
he had a first round draft pick on his team, Xavier Leggett.
Yeah, he did. I said his best receivers last year.
Unbelievable. What a pick. I mean, if only they had bought the UN score model. I mean, literally.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy that's actually true. If they just had some, that's great. Anyway, to Bryce Young's point here, he was really bad all year, and he's really held up by a week 18 game at Atlanta, where he scored 43 fantasy points or whatever. He had 3 touchdowns, no picks. Look, he we say that he played really good down the stretch. Well, it was Dallas at home, Arizona at home, at Tampa Bay. If you remember, they had the worst secondary. They were a passing sieve. And you know what he did against them? 203 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Amazing. I mean, oh, wow. And then the aforementioned game at Atlanta. So he played a really awful schedule down the stretch. Matter of fact, even after the bye, it was Kansas City at home, Tampa Bay at home, at Philly, and he obviously didn't play that well there, but Dallas, Arizona, Tampa Bay, Atlanta.
Yes,
So
he's already dead, man. He's already dead.
Sorry. I'm just saying, like, sometimes I look at that schedule stuff and it's like, some of the splits we pull, it's all small sample size. And you start to go, wait a minute, what the hell was I thinking? We've done this with countless players. We did this with Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
We did this with Sam Darnold. I remember Sam Darnold, highest quarterback rating if you take the last 10 games of his rookie, whatever. And I was like, dude, what are we doing? Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. And I think we might be doing that with Bryce Young. I would fade. I'm a full fade. I don't want any part of Bryce Young whatsoever. I think he's probably, going to be a backup.
Good point. Good points. So let's talk about those weapons, right? I think we've talked a little bit about Tet, so let's get him off the list here. I think he's going to be an alpha, 120 plus targets from day one. I don't know if that amounts to him being a top 12 wide receiver, because I think there could still be some bumps in the road, everything we talked about with Bryce Young. But I think he is going to be a top 20 wide receiver in 2025 as a rookie with that target volume that he gets. And I think even if he can provide some upside on that, I think we're going to be really happy with Tet McMillan going into year 2 is kind of where I'm sitting on him. Jax, you're shaking your head. Come on, man. You just shitting on everybody here.
He's got a terrible quarterback, and he's not better than Odunze. He's not better than Marvin Harrison Jr. Neither one of those guys finished as top 20 wide receivers in their first season, and Marvin Harrison had it all there for him. So I don't see it. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll get those 120 targets you're talking about for sure, or not for sure, but I would bet he does. But I'm not seeing efficiency and touchdowns and big plays and offensive success in Carolina. Color me skeptical on Tet McMillan.
I think if we look at kind of some of the stuff we said about the Bengals,
there's a reason I'm 0 shares.
Yeah,
I may not have 0 cares. I have a few cares, but I'm 0 shares of Tet McMillan.
Well, and if they're playing from behind, that's only good for Tet, right? Because he's going to be getting some downfield targets with them trying to catch up. I think for me, those 120 targets tell me that at the least he's going to compile his way into being a top 20 wide receiver. You know what I mean? And then anything that he does on his own on top of that,
I'll take that bet.
Ceiling.
You want to bet? You want to bet? Dinner at Mastro's for
I don't know what that is.
I'm joking. We're not actually going to go to Mastro's, but
And our money's not the same either, brother. For betting either.
You will do the proverbial $100 bet.
For you is 37 for me, man.
Let's just put a bet on the board. I say he finishes outside the top 25. I'll take outside the top 25. You take inside the top 20.
Okay.
20 to 25 is a push. That's why I'll fade him outside.
Is there a caveat of 120 targets here though?
No,
because top 20 is pretty hefty.
Wait. So you guys are betting.
You said that you're pretty sure he's going to be top 20.
No, I said he's going to be top 20 if he gets that kind of volume and then has some ceiling on top of it. But if he comes in and gets 75 targets,
where do you want the bet line to be? I'll give it to you. You tell me now. You move the line.
Joe, what do you think? Is that fair or is that stupid? What do you think, Joe?
I actually like it because Jax is outside the top 25.
Yeah.
Trav's inside the top 20. I want 20 to 24.
Is a target threshold viable there or no?
No, that's playing bowl. That's bowling with the guardrails on. Let's just make a bet. It's not for all your money, You're fine. You're gonna be okay.
I know. Fine. Tet
I think
top 20.
Stand on business. Get up on your toes.
I will stand on the business. Of course,
I think you should bet on if he finishes better. I think you should bet on if he finishes better than Jordan Addison or not. I think that's more fun.
He's definitely finishing better than Jordan Addison. If I think he's going to be top 20, he's definitely finishing better than Jordan Addison.
That would be better than Jordan Addison.
Most likely finishing inside the top 20.
I think the answer is actually somewhere between 20 and 30. And I know this is a total cop-out, but he's
All right, Switzerland.
He's the number.
But that's why I took outside top 25. I wouldn't even take a 20. I don't want to win on a 21 finish or 22 finish. I'll
No,
give
that's
you
fine.
top
Straight
20.
up.
You give me outside
Straight
top
up.
25.
Yeah.
Hold on,
Yeah.
Jax. You just talked over Trav doing a Swiss
I
accent.
know
Do it
you
again,
guys
Trav.
totally blew that. Like, I was pulling out a good one for you, and you guys both just talked right over it. Didn't even give a shit about my accent when I was talking
I
about
wanted
how
to
much
hear it.
Joe
I wanted to hear
likes
it.
the Tet McMillan. He says he likes Tet McMillan, but he doesn't like him that much. He doesn't know how much he likes Tet McMillan.
He wants to be called T-Mac, but everybody calls him Tet.
I'm not doing it. That's yours. No, that's yours. I'm gonna let you do that impression. Yeah.
And mustache rides are free, okay?
Oh yeah.
I don't know if Ted doesn't even have a mustache, but anyway, I think regardless, that's still like a decent finish for him, right? Like if he's a top 24 wide receiver in year one, that's fine.
Be amazing.
Jax, we know how you feel about him and that you think he's not going to be good at all, so it's a full fade.
I didn't
Joe?
say that.
I actually
You
think
said you fade him.
I side more with Trav on this, and I'm gonna just go ahead and say inside the top 25, and here's why. Where he excelled in college was kind of these mid-range target depth, right? He's not really a deep ball threat. He's not really a off the line of scrimmage guy. He's kind of like in this 8 to 15 yard range is where he does all of his damage. And that's also where Bryce Young kind of happens to tend to throw the ball a lot and tends to be good. So I actually think when, Carolina drafted him, they did it as sort of like a fit to their quarterback's skill set. And they've got other guys to occupy other parts of the field to kind of open that up for him. That being said, he's in a little bit of danger of being in that Marvin Harrison Jr. role as well, where it's like they're going to probably just plug him in at X and he's going to have to make a living out there while everybody else is doing this underneath stuff. And we know that Thielen's there. We know our lunch pail holder, hard hat wearer Hunter Renfrow is there. And also one of our favorite guys from last year that was absolutely free, Jalen Coker, is still there. So there's actually a lot of people to throw the ball to in addition to Leggett and Sanders. So it's going to be hard for him to hit that threshold, but I do think he is going to get peppered, and I do think he's going to be the number one read on a lot of these. It really just depends on scheme and Canal. So that's why I'm Switzerland. That's why I'm Switzerland.
I think the bet is fair. He's going off as wide receiver 21 on Underdog right now. So just to give some context, I might pick him a couple times if I had a portfolio, but I don't love that pick at all. Good for you guys. That's a rich pick right there.
It is rich.
Yep,
he's overpriced. The only reason to take him on Underdog is just because of if you're looking at week 17 matchups, and I have done that a decent amount because I'm an Omni stacker.
Exactly.
Yeah, hang on, hold on. Let me see who's he playing. I should know this off the top of my head already, but I don't. But anyway, so I think they're playing the Seahawks. That's right. So whenever you get your JSNs, you got to go get your Tets as well, right?
Yep.
Nerd.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be an interesting one to see play out because he's another one of those top drafted wide receivers who looks like the X, and there is parts of the NFL that looks like they might be going away from that type of wide receiver. Yeah. So please, fucking Dave Canales, don't be as shitty as Drew Petzig. Please. Petzig was the Arizona guy. Fuck.
All right. The real question is, do we care about any of these other wide receivers?
Well, that's what I had another banger. You guys snorting coker this season or what?
This offense just sucks. I think this offense is not going to be good. Yeah. And I don't want to attach too much to Bryce Young, but I mean, Coker is so free, and he could be the number one target on the team for crying out loud. It's possible.
Who doesn't love free Coker? Also, their defense is going to be so bad as well that they're gonna have to play a little up tempo.
It's gonna be something, man. This team's gonna be terrible. That's all. I think they're gonna be awful.
Is there any need to speak about more of the options? I think Chuba Hubbard is kind of your like mid-range running back 2, who's probably going to get bell cow work, give you some running back 1 weeks. You know what I mean?
He's
like,
so
he doesn't
good.
feel good as the number 1 on your team, but he probably will produce like that on a lot of weeks.
I would say just that the lunch pail prodigal son has returned, and let's not underrate Hunter Renfrow
Hunter Renfrow, yeah.
and him just stepping right into that Thielen role at some point. As a Raiders fan, I can tell you, Jax likes to say in the NFL, it's always 3rd and 7. It's always 3rd and Renfrow. All right. It's always 3rd and Renfrow.
3rd and Thielen. More than a Thielen here.
Dude, that's the interesting piece that I've been thinking, is because I put out a tweet yesterday, guys, that said I might be talking myself into Hunter Renfrow, because he really only has to get past Jalen Coker, because Thielen's not really a threat for him. Thielen got like 8 targets out of 2 wide sets last season, guys. So Thielen is not going to be playing in 2 wide receiver sets. And so Jalen Coker could absolutely be that guy. Jalen Coker played 60% slot last year. But Hunter Renfrow in his big season with your Raiders, Joe, was like a 35% out wide player. So he can play some of that slot flanker. So there's a world, call me crazy, where Hunter Renfrow is the starting slot flanker for the Carolina Panthers this season. And if you look at ADP lists, he's not even on ADP lists right now. So he is as free as free can be. And he's got a pretty accomplished lunch pail that he's bringing with him. So I'm willing to throw that dart.
He's got a receding lunch pail, actually.
Absolutely.
No, that's his hard hat is receding.
That's what I meant.
The moment
he's
he
growing
unretired,
a built-in hard hat is what he's doing. He's just growing a built-in hard hat.
This is not a joke. The moment he unretired, I added him in every league that I could because we know like what this ceiling looks like, and it's pretty damn usable. Like it's probably not happening this year, but it's
Wan'Dale Robinson
having an effect, bench.
And much like one Joquavius Kuvatakis, don't get blinded by the plaid button-up and the put-together look. Hunter Renfrow is a bit of a dog, so you never know what's going to happen with him coming in for the Carolina Panthers. And with that, boys, I'm going to ride us out. This has been a fun episode. Joe Quave was fucking back, so as is customary, we went long as
we did go long. It was fun though.
Tonight we'll probably push 2 bills on this one, but that's okay because we had a good time doing it. We hadn't hung out all together in like 2 weeks, and I'll be honest to our listeners, as much as we love giving you banger fantasy content, which I think we do give you, we have just as much fun just getting together and hanging out. And so it was great chatting with Joe Quave and his foray into fatherhood. Welcome again. And congratulations. Hello, little Woody, as we have dubbed him. Pleasure to have you as the prodigal son of the underground. And shout out to your wife, Joe, for being such a hero. Jax, anything to say before I finish this off?
You mean
here?
For sleeping with Joe?
Yeah, like how she puts up with him and does that. Hey, she's a saint.
I mean, Lord knows we're not doing that. So just to circle back for you, I'll also take the TJ Hockenson 100 target bet if you want that one. If you want that one, I'll give you that.
He's not getting 100 targets this year.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we got the.
I'm on Jackson's side on this one.
TJ Hockenson 100 targets and Tet McMillan outside the top 25 wide receivers. Start printing the money.
Or inside the top 20 on my end. Yeah. Print that money and send it up here, boys, because the exchange rate is just cash for daddy. You send me $100, I'm getting like 160, fella. Obviously,
we just send it right to the Baja.
And with that, we are out of here. Please subscribe to that YouTube channel. Check us out on all the social medias. For Jax Falcone, for one Joquavius Kuvatakis, I am Trav, and we are out. Peace.